We are here in Huntsville, Alabama, driving the 2024 Polaris Ranger XP Kinetic, the all-electric Ranger that we've been waiting on. Let's take a ride along. We'll tell you everything that we learned today while hanging out at their production facility. Believe it or not, we are actually driving a Polaris Ranger right now. If you're familiar with the Ranger running along at 20-30 miles an hour, you shouldn't be able to hear my voice. This isn't a trick of a mic. We're driving the all-new Ranger Kinetic. This is the EV, the electric vehicle, built in partnership with Zero Motorcycles. And we just toured the production facility here in Huntsville, Alabama. We were talking about 110 horsepower, 140 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot. The regular Polaris XP 1000, which is the most powerful gasoline Ranger they make, only makes 82 horsepower and 62 pound-feet of torque, so more than double the torque. That has led to this rig having an extra 250 pounds of bed capacity compared to the XP 1000, which is huge. It's an extra 25%. A couple of things going on there. This doesn't have a regular CVT. This has a cog belt transmission, just like Polaris's Slingshot. Polaris says that is a sealed system. You should never have to replace the belt. Keep in mind the Slingshot runs 225 horsepower, so this is less than half the horsepower. Polaris says this rig can be charged in around 6 hours with the standard charging system. You can pay to upgrade the charging system bit by bit. You can charge it in as little as 3 hours with the large battery pack. This is the large battery pack here. Two batteries, two 100-volt batteries. One's beneath the passenger seat, one's beneath the driver's seat. Before we go any farther, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's going to make sure you see all of our freshest content all the time on your homepage. We are officially on Polaris's test track now. This is pretty cool. You get to actually see where they test these things. Rained last night, so things are a little snotty. Of course, Polaris had all sorts of fancy marketing things to say about this rig. One thing that stuck out to me was they said they didn't build this rig to say they have an electric Ranger. They've had electric Rangers in the past, right? They've had a lead-acid one years ago. They had a lithium-ion one there for a while. This is something completely different. This is less on the golf cart side and more on the actual functional machine side. Polaris says you can expect 45 miles of range on the Premium, that's the single battery unit, and up to 80 miles of range on the Ultimate, which is the rig that we're in here now. You know, think of the last time that you put 80 miles on a Ranger. It does happen, but I think for most people, and you know, Polaris has got all sorts of data on how people use these machines, they say that most people stick within the 40 miles a day situation. You use it all day at the farm or the house, the property, whatever. You bring it back, you plug it in, and it's good to go the next day. So it's worth pointing out, this is not an all-new machine, right? This is basically the current Ranger that's been modified to accept the electric powertrain. Even so, Polaris says maintenance costs are going to be substantially less just because there are fewer moving parts. Speaking to Josh Harmes, who's one of the uppity-ups here at Polaris, he says buyers can expect to save $3,500 over the course of 5 years on maintenance alone, which seems insane until you think about it, right? No oil changes, woo. They have, you know, front diff fluid, a transmission fluid, and battery coolant, and that's literally it. No CVT belt, no gasoline to deal with, no any of that stuff. And, you know, for now, electricity is still considerably cheaper than gasoline, so your use cost gets pretty low. I think what's most surprising to me is that this comes in at a relatively accessible price point, right? Polaris is saying the Premium, which is the entry-level rig, starts at around $24,000. That's not a lot. God have mercy, the acceleration. It's quick. It's proper quick. Other things that set this thing apart. It's got a completely new instrument cluster compared to the gas version. You've got a power and a regen gauge. Regen, we're talking about brake regen, right? So you toss on the brakes or you start coasting, it immediately starts recuperating power. You know, for the most part, this feels very similar to a gas Ranger. It's just everything is that much smoother. God. Drift on command. So the cool thing about an electric motor, right? You've got 140 pound-feet of torque, but it comes on immediately. That's at 0 RPM. So the second you squeeze the throttle, you have all of that torque at your command. One of my biggest concerns with this rig was how heavy it was going to be. Batteries in electric vehicles, they're heavy by nature, right? You're talking about big lithium-ion things. What I didn't take into account is that when you're converting a gasoline vehicle to an electric vehicle, you're losing a lot of weight. You know, you're losing the entire fuel system. Gasoline, very heavy. You're losing an entire engine. Polaris says the Premium is only 250 pounds heavier than an XP 1000. You don't feel it, in part because the weight is really, really low compared to the gasoline model, so your center of gravity is much lower, which means the thing handles much better. The fact that you've got considerably more power doesn't hurt either. I cannot wait until they put this in a Razor. All right, so the hilarious part is we've been driving around in standard mode. There are 3 drive modes. Eco, obviously the most conservative of the drive modes. Now we're in sport. Sport gets up and goes. That's pretty cool. Oh yeah, you can get in all sorts of trouble with this thing. Hi-ho! So it will spin all 4 tires on command. That's pretty cool for a utility rig. So they wanted this thing to be able to perform just as it does here in Alabama when it's 80 degrees outside, as it would in Minnesota when it's much colder. So they've tested this rig all the way down to negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit, and it maintains performance. Part of that is because it has a battery heater inside. It'll use a little bit more juice, but it keeps the thing ready to go. If you're thinking, okay, so, you know, I live in places where it's not tropical all year long, how do you get heat on this thing? Well, it comes with an electric heater that Polaris says gets warm way faster than the regular gas motor. So you turn the sucker on, you've got instant heat, ready to go. And because this is effectively a regular Ranger underneath, all of the parts and accessories that we're used to enjoying on the Ranger are still applicable here. God, the torque on this thing is legendary. So you want a full cab? You can have a full cab. This one's got a windshield, it's got a windshield wiper. The rig ahead of us has, you know, the whole parts catalog thrown at it. So you've got, you know, a headache rack and various lights and all sorts of stuff. All that bolts on. They were saying today that 95% of Ranger accessories will carry over. You still get the same, you know, level of performance in terms of suspension that we're used to seeing from the Ranger. So 14 inches of ground clearance, that is quite a bit. For me, the best part about this rig is how quiet it is. You know, I love an internal combustion engine. I love engines that make good noise. This is excellent. We're sitting here creeping through the woods with 5 other rigs, and I'm talking in a library voice, effectively. That's great. Pull up. Oh my gosh, the throttle response is spectacular. Super simple, super smooth. The batteries have forced air cooling, so you've got fans back there that are working to keep the batteries cool as we're out here hossing along. That's amazing. The loudest thing you hear are the fans in the battery. So many people have resistance to electric vehicles because you're worried about range, you're worried about longevity, but when you think of these things in terms of complexity, this is a considerably simpler machine than a gas-powered vehicle. You know, you've got a transmission, that's the thing that has the most moving parts. Otherwise, it's just the motor, which is a handful of moving parts. Oh, look at this big log. Let's watch this guy clutching this. Oh yeah, ain't no thing. All right, we're gonna do this in high, just out of morbid curiosity. No problem. I love a utility rig because they're always more capable than you think they're gonna be. You know, everybody thinks they need a Razor with 20 inches of suspension travel or whatever, but you really don't. I mean, especially on the East Coast, you can have a lot of fun and have a machine that's considerably more useful. You know, you got a dump bed, you've got 2,500 pounds of towing capacity, you've got 1,250 pounds of bed capacity. Well, that's pretty huge. Yeah, this thing is spectacular. Yeah, you know, the CVT is excellent for a side-by-side, but that means the engine is always at wide open whale. You don't get that, you know, RPM rise and fall the way you get with a geared transmission. And that means that you're riding around basically listening to a very loud vacuum cleaner. This doesn't have that. It's just quiet and excellent. What a little billy goat. If you're looking at buying a Ranger and you don't look at the Ranger Kinetic, you're just doing yourself a disservice. This thing is top notch. Thanks for hanging out with us down in Alabama. We had a great time playing with the new Ranger XP Kinetic. You want to know more about this rig? We're going to have a full review coming to the site soon. We've got buyer's guides, we've got galleries, we've got videos, everything over at utvdriver.com. Check us out on all your social media channels. We'll see you soon. Don't put it on its side. Woo, like that.